have a moment of silence. Thank you. Item 1 is adoption of the agenda. Any changes?
Yes, Mr. Rockwell, I'd like to hear the entire special concurrent agenda, which is items 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3, after item 8.2.
Great, so noted. Item 2, approval of minutes of the special meetings of June 7th and June 1st, 2022, and the regular and special meetings of May 19th, 2022. Any changes there? Seeing no violent disagreements, those will stand. We have no programs and presentations tonight, so we'll move to item 4, public hearing. We'll start with number 4.1, public hearing for the Sierra Sands Unified School District budget for fiscal year 22-23. Ms. McGuire.
Good evening, President Rockwell, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Ostash. I'm happy to present to public hearing the Sierra Sands Unified School District proposed budget for the fiscal year 22-23. Education Code 42127 requires that public hearing be conducted prior to the adoption of the district's annual budget. A public hearing will be held regarding the district's budget for 22-23. There are no fiscal implications, and it is the superintendent's recommendation that the board conduct a public hearing on the proposed budget.
Any violent disagreement with holding a public hearing? Probably not. So we will open public hearing on the City Council chamber clock at 7:04. Seeing no takers, we will close the public hearing. Thank you for the information at the workshop last week.
It was my pleasure to present that.
We'll move to item 4.2, public hearing for the 2022-23 local control funding formula LCFF budget overview for parents. Dr. Savko.
As required by local control funding formula, education codes 42103, 42127, and 52062, all school districts must develop a local control accountability plan, or LCAP. The LCAP is a 3-year plan that describes the goals, actions, services, and expenditures to support positive student outcomes that address state and local priorities. The LCAP provides an opportunity for districts to share their stories of how, what, and why programs and services are selected to meet local needs. The 22-23 LCFF budget overview for parents is a required component of the LCAP. It is intended to help stakeholders better understand funding decisions included in the district's budget. The total revenue projected for 22-23 is $75,840,340,000. Hopefully I said that correctly, and 84 cents. If not, I'll take another stab. Of which $52,440,629 is local control funding formula. $16.4 million is other state funds, $720,000 is local funds, and $6.2 million is federal funds. Of the $52.4 million in LCFF funds, $5.6 is generated based on the enrollment of high-need students, foster youth, English learner, and low-income students. The LCFF budget overview for parents, the district budget, and the LCAP must be presented at a public hearing prior to the board meeting at which the LCAP and the budget are adopted. The Sierra Sands Unified School District LCAP, followed by the budget, will be presented for approval at the June 23, 2022 special board meeting. Not later than 5 days after the adoption of the LCAP, the governing board shall file the LCAP with the Kern County Superintendent of Schools. County superintendents must review school district LCAPs and ensure alignment of projected spending, services, and goals. The Sierra Sands Unified School District's draft 22-23 LCFF budget overview for parents is posted on the district website for review and comment. Comments received from the public hearing will be considered as appropriate to make to final revisions to the plan. It's recommended that the board conduct a public hearing on the proposed 22-23 LCFF budget overview for parents. A final version will be presented to the board for approval at the June 23, 2022 special board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Safko. We will open the public hearing at 7:08. Seeing no takers, we will close the public hearing at 7:08 and a half and move on to item 4.3, public hearing for the 2022-23 Local Control Accountability Plan. Dr. Safko.
The background information is the same. This is the public hearing request for the actual local control accountability plan. So the components of the LCAP for the 2022-23 LCAP year must be posted as one document, assembled in the following order: LCFF budget overview for parents, supplement to the annual update to the 21-22 LCAP, plan summary, engaging educational partners, goals and actions, increased or improved services for foster youth, English learners, and low-income students, action tables, and then the instructions. The LCAP must be presented at a public hearing prior to the board meeting at which the LCAP and the budget are adopted. The Sierra Sands Unified School District Budget Overview for Parents, the district budget, and the 22-23 LCAP will be presented for approval at the June 23, 2022 special board meeting. Not later than 5 days after the adoption of the LCAP, the governing board shall file the LCAP with the Kern County Superintendent of Schools. County superintendents must review school district LCAPs and ensure alignment of projected spending, services, and goals. The latest draft of our LCAP is posted on the district website for review and comment. And if you're interested in that, you would, we have icons that kind of are in the middle of the page. There's an icon that says LCFF and LCAP information, and that's where you will find any LCAP drafts or documents related to both. The attachment in your board packet was from the June 6th version, and now we're on the June 16th version, which is posted for your review and public comment on our district website. It's recommended that the board conduct a public hearing on the proposed 22-23 LCAP. Educational partner input will be considered when making final revisions to the LCAP, and a final version will be presented to the board for approval at the June 23, 2022 special board meeting.
So we will open public hearing on this item at 7:10. You're part of the public. You are welcome to make a comment.
I appreciate Dr. Savko, just the work that you put into it and the time that you took to go over it with us and highlighting that it's a living document. And I looked at that earlier today and saw that even some of the stuff from our discussion has been added to that, adding in metrics and that kind of stuff. So I want to say thank you for that. I know adding in things to be able to match our dashboard and other things that we've got going on. Specifically, there's a new metric there on goal number 1 that I was very appreciative to see that got added in there for our discussion. So thank you for keeping it a living document and all the work that you put into it.
Thank you. I just represent the work of the board and our district, and it's my pleasure to represent our local needs and hopefully more local control in the near future.
I guess before I close public comment, I'll make one comment. Stop me if you feel this is inappropriate, but we had a fairly rousing conversation about education in this community over the last several weeks. And what enthused me about it was all of the interest that seemed to be here around all of that. And I actually made a post on social media on the morning of the last election, basically saying that, hey, I don't know how things are going to go, but I'm excited that people are engaging, and I am hopeful that however this goes, that people will, show the energy after the election that they showed during the campaign up to the election. And so it's a little disheartening to see no public here speaking in the hearing. And what I think maybe this is an educational need for the community. So those of you that are here, those of you that are watching on YouTube, the public hearing is really the best time set aside for us to get feedback from the community on important pieces of work that go on in this district. And the LCFF and the LCAP, this is the local local control accountability plan. This is the plan that lays out a significant portion of what we are doing to educate our kids. So if you have feedback on how we're doing that, rather than making things up and throwing out comments about what's happening and what's not happening, you need to look at stuff like this that lays out what we're really going to go do. And if you have disagreements with it, now's the time to put those things into the conversation so that we can make adjustments if appropriate. But if we don't get any comments, then we do what we do, right? Which is the best we can do, which I think normally is pretty good. But, there was a whole lot of conversation about not getting public input. Here's a phenomenal opportunity to get public input, and we didn't get any. So I find that disheartening, given the activity in the recent campaign about what should or should not be going on in education in our community.
Correct me if I'm wrong, with this specific plan, there are also multiple opportunities to be able to collect input all along the way when the LCAP's developed and redone. We're kind of at that final stage as well. So it's important with us and recognize when to get involved in the process before it even gets to us to give that input as well. And we can use all the help we can get, right? Just to add to that here and make sure that we're also paying attention to those other steps along the way, because there's a lot of effort that goes into that. And that's like when we were getting ready for the Measure C and we had people coming out, we need to be looking at each of those opportunities to get involved. Just to add to your point that here and other times as well.
I agree. I mean, we had a great opportunity, last week when we had a workshop on these topics.
Right.
Public meeting, anybody could come, and we really got into the weeds of what was here, and then here in a regular meeting, public hearing, again, another great opportunity to provide feedback if you think we should be doing something different. And like I said, I sort of hope that the energy off the heels of the the election that would spill over into this, and like I said, it's a little disheartening to not see it, unless everybody, people that didn't come because they thought this looked perfect to them. So,
President Rockwell, may I add to the thinking, just to add to Dr. Houck's thinking? So the process is iterative, and there are multiple opportunities and to provide input. I would say for most families that the school plan for student achievement, Mrs. Decker will be presenting those. Those essentially are school LCAPs. And so the school plans for student achievement, that's probably closest to the parent's experience or the educational partner. So I would just remind our educational partners that anyone is welcome to attend the school site council meetings as well. The agendas are posted. And that's when the data is examined and analyzed and resources are appointed to address the school's needs as determined by the closest educational partners. So we always use that as an opportunity as well to connect that to our LCAP as they should be aligned. So that's just another opportunity that might be closer to the work of a family.
Great, thank you for that. Any other comments from board or public in the public hearing? Seeing none, we will close public hearing at 7:17. Thank you, Dr. Safko. Takes us to item 5, reports and communications. We don't have a student members report. For some reason, they think that summer's a time to just play around and have a good time or work or something. So, so that takes us to item 5.2, reports from members of the board. Mr. Ferris.
I just wanted to comment, Tim and I had the opportunity yesterday to meet with other delegates from our region of the California School Boards Association, and we got updates on kind of where things were in the legislative processes and the things that are before the legislature, and an update on where the budget is currently. And through that process, it became kind of clear to me that as we reflect on how things are evolving in education in the state of California, that the school boards of California have been able to have an effect in a positive way on how things are accomplished. And we were just speaking of local control, and while we always recognize how many places we don't have it, there are continued efforts to protect what we do have and improve what we do have. And those efforts are showing some level of success because of the participation of board members. During our meeting, we talked about some of the specific successes that the California School Board Association has had over the years, some that have a real meaningful effect today in regards to what had been proposed before and was in law as far as a reserve cap, which would have limited how we spent money in times like this. And I can recall specifically when we were having those discussions, almost every element of public education took the position that we were wasting our time on that discussion because the way the document was framed, it would never come into effect because the numbers were such that they were so ridiculous it wouldn't come into effect. Well, we are in an environment where the numbers are so crazy it has taken effect, and it would have severely hampered how we move forward. But because of the work of the school board members of the California School Boards Association, that was changed, and we are not having to follow that specific reserve cap. And I say that because, I don't know about anybody else, but for me, there are times as we do our work in our school board work, both locally and in the state and national level when we're trying to influence the discussion. There are times that I look inwardly and say, okay, are we really getting anything done? Are we really making a difference? And I think as I look over our last year's circumstance and the way there's movement in several areas, and when I look at the battle over the reserve cap and look at what's not happening today because of the work we have done, I believe I'm able to say, yes, we made a difference. And I want to salute the work that this board does to be involved at our state and national level, to influence those decisions because it is critical and it's an important component of our work. And I would encourage us all to continue to be vigilant when we get those requests for contact your legislators. It only takes 3 or 4 minutes to do it, and I know often I think to myself, oh, I'll put that on the back burner and get to it later, and then I don't. And we need to stay right on top of that because it does make a difference. It benefits our local community and our local district in a very meaningful way. So I just want to encourage us all to continue to do that and encourage us to recognize that there has been important work accomplished, and I believe we all had a part in that. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. I have to admit, I thought of you because I was in a brief earlier this week that was actually related to stuff on the base. And in that brief, the word subsidiarity came up, and I've never seen it anywhere other than here until that moment this week. So, and that's a great word for what you just discussed. So
Thank you, Governor Brown.
Right. Dr. Hauk?
I was going to bring it just a little more local because I was thinking some big things happened since the last time we met in our district with our graduations and our promotions. And they're really well done. As I've said before, I've gotten to be part of them in other districts, other institutions, even our colleges. And Burroughs is still, in my mind, one of the best. And it's kind of that neat culminating opportunity for all of us to get to see all the work from, kindergarten teachers get to now see these students that have grown up with them and through their system. And it's also a time to celebrate the rest of everybody who does the good work in our district. Even down to, our custodians, they're there right afterwards, cleaning stuff up, getting it set up. And I wanted to say thank you to the staff that makes that possible, from bringing the students from kindergarten all the way up to those that are there on the day of, maybe holding the flags in place in the wind. There's all these little things, and so much of it is unsung, but I think it was fun to be able to be there with this group, and even just the emotions that came out of this group as we go through those ceremonies. Maybe not everybody sees how meaningful it is to all of us, and you guys did a really good job, so thank you as well.
Well, thank you. Mr. Johnson.
So I just have one thing from the CSB meeting yesterday. One thing I actually want to thank Dr. Ostash and Mr. Ald and the whole negotiating team on both sides from all of our unions, how well we've done the last 2 years to get contracts in place, because as we hear at this meeting, districts throughout the state are in huge battles right now with their bargaining units. So I truly appreciate our partnership with all of our union groups and just our internal, everybody's into the process, and I truly appreciate that, because that makes nothing worse as a board member and as a district, and that internal tension. So I just want to say publicly thank you for all the hard work you've done over the last couple of years to have our great working relations with our bargaining units. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I guess I was hoping somebody else would bring up this topic, but since nobody else did, I would be remiss not to mention the Measure C effort. I think we are certainly disappointed in how that came out. We voted unanimously to put it on the ballot, so we believed in it, and so it's unfortunate. And to the extent that people voted against it because of real information and that they truly understood what we were trying to do, and it felt like it wasn't appropriate. I'm fully respectful of those no votes. To the extent that there was so much misinformation and so much distortion and so much I guess deriding almost of this board, that disappointed me, because it's I think there was a lot of negative discussion about what we do, how we're doing, without real understanding. People who've never been here, who've never talked to any of us, seem to have opinions of how we were approaching this, and that was very disappointing to me, that this wasn't a straight up, upfront discussion about the real merits or not of the measure. So that was disappointing. But like I said earlier, a lot of people were engaged, and from that perspective, it's good. And I sure hope that this is just the first board meeting of the summer, and people are off doing summer things, and that they'll be excited and engaged and helpful in moving the district forward from this point. So I look forward to where that goes. So onward and upward. That takes us to item 5.3, Superintendent's Report, Dr. Ostash.
Thank you, Mr. Rockwell. I'll pile on what great information that's being shared. I'll start with the attendance report. Month 9 enrollment is 4,993. That's a pretty good number for us. Last year this time was 4,876, so we're up 117. Our ADA, so that's our enrollment. Our attendance is down a little bit, as it is across the state, but more like around 90%. But we believe that we'll, through good communication and through hopefully, knock on wood here, a little bit of a more of a normalization process, we'll be back into our 95, 96% ADA as we move into next year. And we'll be talking with parents and community about that. I couldn't say it any better than Dr. Hauk, but I did want to mention that I appreciate all the principals and the work they put in, but I also want to highlight for the promotions and the graduations that every single one of them had amazing student speakers and performers. They always do a great job in Sierra Sands, but I just have to say this was a pretty exceptional year. The messages, the talent, they were just amazing. From kicking it off with the adult school graduation on through to Burroughs being our last graduation, just amazing student speakers and performers. So I just want to compliment our students. A little bit of a budget update. Appreciate the comments about the collective bargaining success that we have and want to maintain. You know, part of a successful process is looking, you know, that everybody wins in a sustainable way. And to me, part of the value of success is building in stability, because destabilization in a school district is a bad thing for everyone, and it disrupts the instructional process. So I want to share a little bit of a budget update. I think that I don't want to be that person that's in a quote good budget year that brings negativity. There's really no negativity, but there is some pragmatism here. And I do want to highlight some information that is coming to us from our county office, who does a really good job of advocating up in the Capitol halls and being aware of what's going on months or hopefully a year in advance. I'll read just a small passage in an update we got recently from the county. And it described that, you know, there is a constitutional deadline to pass a budget, which ever since an amendment was made to not pay Congress if they don't have one on time, they always have passed a budget on time. But this time there appears to be quite a gap between the legislature and the governor. And I want to just read a few sentences here. During the hearing, there was a hearing last week where the Assembly Budget Committee actually ended up approving the legislative budget despite warnings and concerns expressed by the Department of Finance, in which they highlighted concerns that the legislature, quote, commits an this would be the legislature's plan if it actually gets implemented. So I want to make it clear that nothing has been implemented yet. There has not yet been an agreement between legislature and governor, but the legislature has approved a plan, and if it gets implemented as it stands, the quote that Department of Finance says would commit an unsustainable amount to ongoing expenditures should economic conditions worsen over time. In the event that the economy does take a downturn, which many fiscal experts have cautioned that it will, some of the allocations in the legislative budget would have to be scaled back or cut altogether. The Department of Finance noted that since the release of the May revision, the economic outlook has worsened based on a drop in the stock market, continued rising inflation rates, and the ongoing war in Ukraine. And we know that since this was written, we saw that the Federal Reserve took an action that hasn't been taken since 1994 with a 75 basis point increase in the reserve rate. So a couple more sentences here. One major point of contention between the May revise and the legislative budget concerning PK through 12 schools is the amount of one-time versus ongoing funds. The governor is in favor of increasing quite a bit with ongoing, but also leans on some one-time. I think as kind of a hedge, maybe taking a little bit of a cue from Governor Brown, who very successfully stewarded the budget over many years, whereas the legislature is looking to rely more on ongoing funds. One example of that debate is the amount by which the LCFF statutory COLA will be augmented. The administration has proposed an augmentation of a little more than 3% for a total, if you add the 6.5%, COLA, for a total of about 9.85%. That would be from the governor. While the legislative proposes that almost tripling that amount for a total funding increase of about 16%. I know that about 20, 21 years ago, we saw about a 10% increase one annual increase of about 10%. I'm not aware, you know, in recent history, the last couple decades, last few decades, I'm not aware of an ongoing annual increase of 16%. I think that would be unprecedented, and it's not in my purview to weigh in on what the legislature and the governor does with that. But I think that when you look at the scale of the billions of dollars of that money, and then the risk that we then onboard as a state for possible destabilizing, you know, it would be a terrible thing to get that kind of commitment and see, of the 1,000 school districts in the state of California, see any number of them commit contractually to huge increases that then get the carpet pulled out from under them because you see possibly a recessionary impact. So enough said on that. It looks like, at a minimum, it looks like it's likely that we'll see as little as a 9.85% increase, and possibly as much as 16%. Nobody knows where it'll land. Some people are saying it might land somewhere in the middle, but you know, who knows? But this is a really interesting time to watch the budget and to see where it goes in the next few weeks. Okay, Measure C. Thanks, Mr. Rockwell, for bringing that up. First, I want to thank Pam Smith. Pam very confidently and passionately stewarded this process behind the scenes in a lot of ways that I really appreciate, and she should be acknowledged for that. She did that without looking to take credit or any of that. But I want to just highlight some of the things that she helped lead in the department and support me in this process. So there are just so many elements that have to come into play, and so much hard work that really builds up to whether a district, you know, puts a bond measure on the ballot or not. And so here's just a few of the elements. So there's an extensive facilities master planning process that goes into play, and that takes years. It's a cumulative, dynamic process, and Ms. Smith and her team and Mr. Coit and others have been at this for several years now. Then there's an involvement process with staff and community at many different stages of that facilities planning. There have been many different working committees that have included staff, including, for example, custodial staff at all the sites, instructional and support staff at all the sites, community members, and I'll get to that, how we've involved community. There's a tremendous amount of financial analysis, looking at how you integrate federal, state, and county funding sources, finding the ways, which is very convoluted and complex, and you have to pay attention to detail, for positioning our district to maximize matching grants or position yourself for eligibility for facilities and or financial hardship. Those sound like general words, but they're actually very specific words in the Office of Public School Construction, known as OPSC. The interactions and the filings with the Kern County and San Bernardino offices of elections. We actually straddle two counties. A lot of times we forget that, including myself. We have a very small population. We serve proudly, but we have to remember they're also in San Bernardino County, so we actually kind of have to double up that effort. Then the lifting up of the Building Schools for Tomorrow Committee, which represented months, perhaps I would say a year of preparation, late evening meetings, and I was going to say hours of work, but it was really more than hours. Let's just suffice it to say months and months of preparation and follow through meetings. And then touring through schools and departments the last couple of years, including staff, including faculty, and just talking to anyone and everyone, visiting with community groups such as Rotary Club and the Realtor Association, Chamber of Commerce, not just once, but several times, countless community member phone and email inquiries, and I could go on, but Pam, thank you very much for leading that process behind the scenes, so to speak, and being in front when I dragged you, and I appreciate the great work. I want to say that, you know, it does look as though we will not prevail. I think we're at or close to final results. Looks like we're close to 55% on a no vote and close to or around 45% on a yes vote. And actually, I want to make it clear that we're not actually surprised by that. Maybe emotionally, it's a little difficult. You have to adjust to it. You have to accept it. But we worked with consultants who employed a research-based survey We had a representative sample of our voting population, and we were advised very clearly, very transparently, that we stood a chance of prevailing, but that it would be difficult, and that there were some odds against us based upon the survey results that we got last fall. But we weighed those risks, you know, because you have to weigh what the risks are, putting your staff on that project, and weighing the cost of it. If you feel like it's possible, you very likely may lose, you know, is there credibility damage or reputational damage? And we just decided to kind of put all that on the shelf and just do the right thing for the right reason, which is what we're taught when we're really young. Because we know that 5 of our 10 schools in our district are not eligible for federal funding. Like we've seen as of late, the last few years, we've seen this sort of unique funding revenue source that's come from Department of Defense. But half of our schools are not eligible for that. And so we owe it to our students and we owe it to our community to put together strategic plans that will make sure that 10 and 20 and 30 years from now, we're operating without interruption, and students don't ever have a year where it's like, oh, well, that year they didn't do well because we didn't have a plan. So anyways, we knew that the survey data indicated that there was a likelihood that the bond wouldn't pass, but we went for it anyways because we believed in the plan, and we believed that it was the lowest cost plan with the highest value given all of its strengths and imperfections. And so anyways, I wanted to make that clear that we knew it was an uphill battle, but we did it anyways. So what we'll do is, you know, we'll regroup. We have some community members who are very vocally in opposition of it for one reason or another, who have reached out to me and to some others on the board and my team, who have actually graciously, in a sense, I don't know if gracious is the right word, but generously offered that they would really like to get involved actually on the next iteration, and they'd like to be a part of the ground floor of a next go. And I think that, you know, it's very likely that, you know, my team, that we would recommend in a couple years that the board approve putting a plan. So we'll have to look and see what that looks like. Maybe the community wants to utilize a different revenue stream and to raise more money than we had asked for, and build them in a more comprehensive plan. Maybe the community really would rather invest more money in the schools. Or maybe maybe that's not true. Maybe the level that we're at is where they want to invest the money, but they want to see some, you know, maybe we want to see some adjustments to what we do operationally. And we're obviously very open to, you know, recalibrating and going through this process again. But I want to highlight that there really, you know, ever since 1978, when in California Proposition 13 passed, there really are only essentially three main local sources that help, you know, renovate or build schools in community, and that's through general obligation bonds, through parcel taxes or Mello-Roos fees. And then it's very common for districts, when they leverage those locally generated funds, that they position themselves for, they could be eligible for state rebates, for matching funds, even hardship monies. We've been eligible for all of those things in the far, mid, and near past. And so it's not a want to. We must find the right solution to solve some of our more pressing needs with the 5 of our 10 schools, more specifically with Monroe Middle School. But when we look at having 5 of 10 schools that have to be managed and improved through local generation of funds, we just have to understand that. So lastly, on the point of Measure C, I just wanted to give a little context that around the state of California, there were 25 local measures on ballots across California. 16 of those 25 were like ours. They were a Proposition 39 general obligation bond measure, which means you need 55% of the vote, and you cannot have a plan that would assess more than $60 per 100,000 of assessed value. Of those 16 bond measures, of which we were one of them, we were one of the 16, 10 of those passed. There were 8 parcel tax measures. Remember, parcel taxes are typically far more lucrative deals between the community and the district and generate much more money. There were 8 of those, and 7 of them passed in these California communities. And then there was one, what they call a 2/3 general obligation bond I'm not exactly sure what that means because they're usually in the odd voting year. But I'm thinking they must have asked for more than $60 per 100,000 assessed value, and that one measure did pass. So although historically over the last few years we have seen as much as over 80% of general obligation bond measures pass, so in the more recent past there's been a very high percentage rate. This year was more like a little over 60% passed. So you are seeing a slide a little bit in the number of general obligation bonds that didn't pass, like ours. And although it's hard to pinpoint why, obviously there's a lot of different reasons why one might not pass. One could be just that the community didn't like the content of the plan. But I think most people agree that seeing it go from over 80 to over 60% probably represents some more macroeconomic things like the war in Ukraine, inflationary pressure, the gas pump. All of those things are having a negative impact. And so in all fairness, to some extent, I think our bond got caught up in some of those headwinds. It's hard to say exactly. And then the last thing I wanted to comment on, I actually commented quite a bit on this at the last board meeting, is it has to do with the Department of Defense, Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation, OLDCC, very specifically their construction program, which is called Public Schools on Military Installations, PSMI. Captain Vaughn's in the audience. He and Dr. Artis, and then our team was Mr. Coit and myself. We went back last week. We had an orientation meeting with the federal team there, and also a proposal meeting, a 2-hour proposal meeting, dealing with the eligibility for Pierce Elementary School. I'm pleased to give some general comments. We don't have anything specific yet because it is quite a process, but the actual proposal meeting went extremely well. We got some constructive feedback early in the process. By the time we got through the entirety of our proposal, we were given quite verbal affirmation about the preparation that we'd put into our proposal. And even though the program provides 90 days, a 90-day window for us to now submit a formal proposal, the director of the program, Mr. O'Brien, and the team encouraged us to not take the full 90 days and really would like to see our proposal in the next several weeks if possible, and that they seemed eager to review a formal proposal. So we took that as, we still have a lot of work yet to do, but we took it as affirmation that we're heading down the right path, and we're looking at doing the very best project we possibly can for our district, which could include up to a complete rebuild of the school, or it could be a hybrid of partially new and the rest renovation or modernization. We just don't know yet, but we're working really hard on that. But I want to specifically acknowledge Captain Vaughn and his team for all the hours of work they put into our partnership. Our slide deck proposal was truly a collaborative process. We put many, many hours into it. And the partnership could not be stronger, and I appreciate your advocacy, sir. Yeah, it's gonna do great things for our community and our students. I just wanted to end that on a note that I thought was striking, and I apologize for taking up a lot of time, but I just think it's important to highlight this. I mentioned that the meeting back there was an orientation day and a proposal day. So the first day was the orientation day, and it gave quite a bit of background. And it was great to be part of the background because actually our school district was part of sort of the genesis of the program, with Murray Middle School and Burroughs High School being in the top 10, so to speak, on that 160 school list. And they described the importance of a school district's posture and understanding that it is an American reality that states and local entities are responsible for their schools. And they described, the federal team described some of the challenges and some of the risks in the PSMI program not even getting off the ground. It did, but there was concern of what they called the moral hazard. And the moral hazard is that a federal program that comes in and does significant, like 80% grants that can rebuild a school, either a new build or modernization, could complicate the perception of communities around the nation in thinking that the federal government would come in and sort of permanently take care of those schools. And the point that was made was that it's really important for districts, especially districts like ours, where you don't just have one or two schools and your whole district is, on an installation. Truly half of our schools are not connected at all to the government, to the Navy. 5 of our 10 schools are not on Navy land, and so we'll never be eligible for that kind of money. So it's just really important that from a mindset point of view, as we overlay our experience with and the lessons we're learning from Measure C, and we move forward with the 4th of 5 projects with Pierce Elementary, and eventually we hope Buick, if we can make that an active school, we have to make sure that we maintain vigilance in understanding that as a local education agency, we are locally responsible for our plants, our facilities, and that the moral hazard that the federal team described is something that I think is very applicable for us here, and we just need to be cognizant of that. And so to the extent that we can keep that in the front of our minds, keep that in our conversations as we plan for our facilities, and as we lift up a future bond measure or parcel tax or whatever would be the right thing at whatever the right time would be with whatever the right plan would be, that we all have a collective understanding that it is our local responsibility for these schools that are not connected to the government, to the federal government. So with that, I appreciate everyone's time, and I appreciate being able to share all that relatively good news.
Great, thank you, Dr. Ostash. We'll move to item 5.4, maybe. Report to the Board of Trustees by the Desert Area Teachers Association. Seeing none, it must be summertime. We'll go to 5.5, report to the Board of Trustees by the California School Employees Association. And I think it's still summertime. So that'll take us to 5.6, communications from the public. The board will provide time during the discussion of each agenda item for members of the public to comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on an item not on the agenda. Comments should relate to items of public interest within the board's jurisdiction. The law prohibits the board from taking action on items not on the agenda. If appropriate, your comments will be referred to staff for response. When addressing the board, please state your name at the podium and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. In accordance with the board bylaws, the board will limit the total time for public input to 30 minutes. Those wishing to address the board beyond the 30-minute time limit may do so at the end of the scheduled meeting agenda. I will open public comment at 7:49. Seeing nobody jumping up and rushing to the podium, we will close public comment at 7:50. Takes us to item 6, Educational Administration 6.1, approval of addendum to Attention to Attendance A2A Software and Services Agreement between Sierra Sands Unified School District and School Innovations and Achievement. Ms. Decker.
Good evening, President Rockwell, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Ostash, staff and community. School Innovations and Achievement, SIA, offers programs and products tailored to meet the increased accountability metrics in the California School Dashboard. As a result of ongoing analysis of attendance and chronic absenteeism trends in the district, chronic absenteeism is an identified area of need in improving graduation rates and dropout prevention. The district entered into a 3-year service agreement in 2021 with SIA's Attention to Attendance program to improve attendance rates and reduce chronic absenteeism rates. According to the 2019 California Dashboard, the percentage of students in kindergarten through 8th grade who were absent 10% or more of the instructional days they were enrolled was 9.7%, which is a 1.8% decline from 2018. This demonstrates an overall district improvement, which indicates that our A2A campaign has been effective. Sierra Sands would like to continue contracting with SIA's Attention to Attendance program to continue improving attendance rates and reducing chronic absenteeism rates. The addendum includes 6 additional custom touch points that will provide positive messaging for students and their families throughout the year at strategic times when the district historically has low attendance rates. The messaging will encourage families to have students attend school and will provide information on the impact of missing school. The fee for each custom touchpoint is $7,400 for a total of $44,400. The addendum will be funded through the district's Title IV allocation. It is recommended that the Board of Education authorize the district to approve the addendum with School Innovations and Achievement attention to attendance as presented.
We've got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board? Or the public, staff? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Takes us to 6.2, approval of 2022-23 school plans for student achievement.
All schools receiving state and federal categorical program funds are required to develop site-level educational plans addressing annual program priorities. These plans, developed by site staff and school site councils, define actions to meet annual goals. Sierra Sands Unified School District schools have consistently incorporated the district's strategic plan goals and action components in their school plans for student achievement, thereby aligning school-level program priorities with district-wide goals and priorities. In addition, site plans address programmatic requirements of the state and federal categorical programs in which each school participates. Once a school plan for student achievement has been developed and approved by the school site council, it must be reviewed continually to determine which goals, strategies, and expenditures should be modified to ensure that the program is current and capable of meeting the needs of all the school's students. Modifications in the plan to reflect changing needs and priorities of the school are made by the school site council and presented to the board as needed. School site personnel and school site councils have been meeting this spring to analyze data, update instructional program priorities, and revise school plans for student achievement. Board-approved school plans for student achievement are required for schools receiving categorical funding. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the school plans for student achievement for the 22-23 school year as presented.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or
I
comments?
just have one. I just have a comment. I just want to say, if you look on the front desk here in front of Diane, that's like what these plans are. They're like 70 or 80 pages apiece, so lots of work for each of the schools, and I appreciate all the hard work trying to do.
That's why I bring this in case
Yeah.
you have questions, because I've got them loaded.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board or community? And we will call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Takes us to 6.3, approval of K2 benchmark phonics instructional materials. Dr. Safko.
Good evening, President Rockwell, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Ostash, staff, and community. In 2017, the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board approved the recommendation of Benchmark Advance for K through 5th grades in English Language Arts textbooks in accordance with Board Policy and Administrative Regulation 6161.1, Selection and Evaluation of Instructional Materials. In the spring of 2021, a kindergarten through 2nd grade literacy assessment advisory team was convened to create a cohesive kinder through 2 literacy assessment system to ensure high levels of literacy for all students. One of the areas of identified need in the process was phonics instruction in Benchmark Advance, especially at the K through 2 levels. Benchmark Advance recently updated the phonics component of the literacy curriculum and instruction with Benchmark Phonics. The enhanced phonics program is based on the latest science of reading research and the tenets of structured literacy. The program is a Tier 1, which means whole group instruction, and Tier 2, which is ongoing small group instruction. It's an approach that delivers explicit, systematic, multimodal, and cumulative structured literacy. The Benchmark Education Company's K2 Benchmark Phonics quote for the 3-year licenses and materials is $108 The quote includes professional development support, which will be utilized prior to the 22-23 school year. The recommended purchase aligns to the Expanded Learning Opportunities ELO Grant Strategy 2, accelerating progress to close learning gaps through the implementation, expansion, or enhancement of learning supports, including but not limited to any of the following: learning recovery programs and materials designed to accelerate student academic proficiency or English language, or both. The expenditures will be funded with the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant. It's the superintendent's recommendation to approve the K-2 benchmark phonics quote as presented.
Got a motion and a second. Mr. Johnson.
I just have one. As we move into universal pre-K, is there a curriculum that attaches to the front end of this for that population?
Not at this time. So
I'm sure all these
UP
companies are gonna start writing stuff for the universal pre-K because all 1,000 districts in California are gonna have to do it. So I'm sure we're gonna
right,
get a board item sometime in the future that's got
right. So,
materials for that age group.
well, I'm glad that you asked that. So universal pre-K is transitional kindergarten, right, in our district. And so last year, I want to say it was 2021, it was, we convened, it was based on the work of that K-2 literacy assessment team. We had recognized when we first adopted Benchmark Advance that they did not have a TK program, and that was very frustrating because we knew we had a gap there. And so in 2021, we investigated their program, and they had released a TK component of Benchmark Advance. And so we ordered those materials, the board approved, those materials for TK, but also Kinder, so that we could bring up some of the students that were not yet proficient at the pre-reading skills. So the only true aligned TK curriculum is actually Benchmark Advance, and the name of that program is Ready to Advance.
Okay.
So great question.
So we're already doing it.
For English language arts.
Right.
And so we shall investigate the needs and the appropriateness of TK materials, because we'll be offering it for all sooner than later.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board or community? Call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. We will move to item 6.4, approval of K through 5th services agreement between Math Solution, Houghton, Mifflin, Harcourt, and Sierra Sands Unified School District. Ms. Dr. Savko.
As a result of ongoing student achievement analysis, math performance remains an area of need for the state, county, and district. Math Solutions Professional Development has been selected for the K-2 and 3rd through 5th grade levels. From 2017 through 2022, professional learning opportunities were researched to impact teaching and learning and to align with the county focus as well. Math Solutions Professional Development was selected and implemented in 2017 through 2019 as the content aligns with the current kinder through 8th grade math adoption, Go Math, by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, as well as the county's math instruction focus. The services agreement includes the following: blended coaching membership, 4 in-person and 8 30-minute online sessions up to 20 participants, and coaching studio licenses. The professional development series has positively impacted first math instruction, that's another way of saying Tier 1 or whole group instruction, and has resulted in a significant shift in our collective understanding of the standards for mathematical practices. Those are not the same as California Common Core state standards. It's the standards for practices in math. Further, the instructional strategy of Talk Moves and Math Talk has supported the development of mathematically proficient students who can reason abstractly and quantitatively and communicate their reasoning to others. The total cost of the services agreement is $19,500 and will be funded through the district's Title II allocation. It's recommended that the Board of Education authorize the district to enter into a services agreement with math solutions as presented.
We've got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board or community? Don't comment on me because anything we can do to keep helping our math move forward, I'm in favor of. So thank you for bringing this to us. We'll have a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Takes us to 6.5, approval of Universal Pre-Kindergarten UPK Plan.
Thank you. The 21-22 California State Budget Package established the UPK Planning and Implementation Grant Program as a state early learning initiative to expand access to pre-kindergarten programs at local educational agencies. This grant program provides $200 million for the California Department of Education to allocate directly to LEAs based on a statutory formula to support planning and implementation costs associated with expanding pre-kindergarten options, such as universally available transitional kindergarten, also known as TK, California State Preschool Program, CSPP, and Head Start for eligible students, and other local community-based partnerships. Sierra Sands Unified School District's UPK implementation grant allocation is $169,180. UPK grant funds may be used for costs associated with creating or expanding CSPP or TK programs, or to establish or strengthen partnerships with other providers of pre-kindergarten education within the LEA, including Head Start programs, to ensure that high-quality options for pre-kindergarten education are available for 4-year-old children. Allowable costs include, but are not limited to, 1, planning costs, 2, hiring and recruitment costs, 3, staff training and professional development, 4, classroom materials, and 5, supplies. LEAs will have until June 30, 2025 to use the funds. As a condition of receiving grant funds, LEAs are required to create a plan articulating how all children in the attendance area of the LEA will have access to full-day learning programs the year before kindergarten that meet the needs of parents, including through partnerships with the LEA's expanded learning offerings, the After-School Education and Safety Program, the California State Preschool Program, Head Start programs, and other community-based early learning and care programs. The plan must be developed for consideration by the LEA's governing board at a public meeting on or before June 30, 2022. The CDE will collect data from the required aspects of the UPK plan via a survey after July 30, 2022. The SSUSD UPK plan has been developed per the Universal Pre-Kindergarten Planning and Implementation Grant Program Planning template provided by the CDE. The $169,180 allocation will be expended per the allowable use of funds through June 30, 2025. It's recommended that the UPK plan be approved as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board or community? We'll have a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. That takes us to 7, policy development and review. 7.1 is approval of revisions to board policy administrative regulation 5111 admission. Dr. Savko, you're still up.
I apologize for that, sir. I'm
No,
hoping
we're
after
happy.
this one
Thank
I
you.
can retire. All right. The Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction has reviewed selected board policies and administrative regulations as a result of recommendation for revisions from the California School Boards Association Policy Service. All proposed policy and admin regulation revisions reflect recent changes in applicable state and/or federal laws and regulations. Board Policy and Admin Regulation 5111 admission have been revised to reflect the following: alignment with new law, AB 130 from 2021, which revises the time spans for transitional kindergarten admittance requirements to be phased in from the 2022-23 school year to the 25-26 school year as reflected in Board Policy 6170.1 Transitional Kindergarten. The distinction between compulsory education for students starting at age 6 and the requirement for districts to offer and admit students who are eligible for transitional kindergarten. Delete the requirement for district enrollment applications to include information about healthcare options, as the law requiring such information has self-repealed, and clarify that a student's residence is a location within the district that may be verified as part of school admission requirements. There are no financial implications, and it's the superintendent's recommendation to approve the revisions to Board Policy and Admin Regulation 5111, admission as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board or community? Seeing none, we'll have a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. We'll move on to item 7.2. See, Dr. Savko, we'd prefer you stayed up here because now we have this guy.
I'll take it.
Item 7.2, approval of revisions to Board Policy 4030, non-discrimination in employment. Mr. Ald.
President Rockwell, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Ostash, staff, and community. The Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources has reviewed selected board policies and administrative regulations as a result of recommendations for revisions from the California School Boards Association Policy Service. All proposed policy revisions reflect recent changes in applicable state and/or federal laws and regulations. Specifically for this policy, the board policy is updated to reflect a new law, SB 331, which makes unlawful a district's use of a non-disparagement agreement or other document that would deny an employee the right to disclose information about unlawful acts in the workplace in exchange for a raise or bonus, excuse me, with respect to any complaint or claim that involves workplace harassment or discrimination, not just those relating to sexual harassment or sexual assault. The policy is also updated to reflect a new law, SB 807, that makes it unlawful an unlawful employment practice for an employer to fail to maintain certain records in accordance with law, particularly when a workplace discrimination or harassment complaint has been filed with the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing. There are no financial implications. It's the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the revisions to Board Policy 4030, non-discrimination in employment, as submitted.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board or community? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Takes us to 7.3, approval of revisions to Administrative Regulation 4112.4, health examinations.
Assembly Bill 1667 revised the tuberculosis or TB testing procedures for school district employees contained in Education Code Section 49406. Previously, school employees were required to take a TB examination when they were first hired, and then once every 4 years. Under the current provisions, individuals hired to a school district can take a TB risk assessment in lieu of the TB examination to determine if they are free of infectious tuberculosis. If no risk factors are identified, an examination is not required. Education Code Section 49406A1A, commencing thereafter, employees are required to take the TB risk assessment at least once every 4 years. Employees are then only required to take a TB examination if risk factors are identified during the risk assessment. The current TB risk assessment questionnaire was developed by the California Department of Public Health and the California Tuberculosis Controllers Association and must be administered by a healthcare provider. We are updating our Administrative Regulation 4112.4, health examinations, to align with the changes in AB 1667, which amended Education Code 49406. There are no financial implications, and it is the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve revisions to Administrative Regulation 4112.4.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board or community? We will have a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Takes us to 8, Personnel Administration. We've got a motion and a second on 8182. Any questions or comments from the community? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Takes us to Personnel Administration on the concurrent agenda. Item 2.1, revised job description for a computer repair technician. Mr. Alt.
When job openings occur in the district, there are occasions when management will review a job description to see if revisions are necessary, especially if there are new certification requirements or software equipment changes. The computer repair technician job description was first adopted in 1999. The Director of Technology has reviewed the current job description for the computer repair technician position and found areas that were antiquated and needed to be removed and/or replaced with current terminology and functions of the position. There are no financial implications, and it is the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the revisions to the job description for the computer repair technician position as presented.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board or community? It would appear that there's been some technology changes since 1999, is it? Seeing no comments or questions, we'll have a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Move to item 2.2, classified personnel. Got a motion and a second on 2.2. Any questions or comments from anybody? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Takes us to 2.3, approval of revisions to the 2022-23 academic calendar.
The District Calendar Committee meets annually to develop recommendations to staff and submit an academic calendar for board approval. Committee members represent all 3 of the associations and management, as well as elementary, middle, and high school grade spans. Academic calendars provide the following information to staff, students, parents, and community members: the number of instructional days, holidays, minimum days, and in-service days. The approved academic calendar for the 22-23 school year was adopted by the board during their June 17, 2021 regular board meeting. On a recent review, it was noted that Christmas holiday is inadvertently placed on December 23rd instead of December 26th, which is the federally observed holiday. The change will not affect the instructional calendar and is only applicable to 12-month classified employees. Friday, December 23rd, 2022, and Monday, December 26th, 2022 will now be the approved classified holidays for 12-month employees. There are no financial implications, and it is the superintendent's recommendation the board approve the revised 2022-23 academic calendar as presented.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board or community? We will have a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. We will adjourn the special concurrent meeting and go back into the regular meeting and go to general administration, beginning with 9.1, discussion and review of board governance procedures. Dr. Ostash.
Thank you, Mr. Rockwell. This is an item that we've visited a few times. It's a great item. The board elected last year to implement a governance handbook, which it was decided that we would use the CSBA, the California School Boards Association template as basically, essentially a framework, and then we made it our own. And one of the things that that I have promised to do is bring an update each year, because some of the information, while much of the information is universal and will last year to year, also in the back there is some helpful information that describes school personnel names and contact information, and also the president and vice president of the board, et cetera. So things that just need to be updated every year. So what I have to present to you is not for adoption, but just for you to review. But I want to highlight the importance of the governance approach and why we have this governance handbook, which is not only helpful for our board, but mainly also, I should say, is for anyone who might be interested in understanding how governance works and how an elected public school board member, what kind of commitment that represents and what the sphere of influence and really the responsibilities that it holds. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just, I'm not going to read the governance handbook because it's 20 some odd pages or more, but there are some bullet points that I want to highlight. And in specific, there are some pages here that describe the characteristics of an effective trustee member. And I'm looking specifically, I think, at pages 6, 7, and 8. It describes the individual trustee, the board, basically how individuals perform as a board, and then also the board's job. So I will read just some bullet points that are, these are long-standing, highly effective principles that have been defined by CSBA, which is the state group that really is the group that all boards belong to. So to be an effective individual trustee would be one who keeps learning and achievement for all students as the primary focus, values, supports, and advocates for public education, recognizes and respects differences of perspective and style on the board and among staff, students, parents, and the community, acts with dignity and understands the implications of demeanor and behavior, keeps confidential matters confidential, participates in professional development and commits the time and energy necessary to be an informed and effective leader, understands the distinctions between board and staff roles, and refrains from performing management functions that are the responsibility of the superintendent and the staff. And the last bullet point here is understands that authority rests with the board as a whole and not with individuals. And then on the next page, it describes how a board can operate effectively, that the board must have a unity of purpose and keep the district focused on learning and achievement for all students, communicate a common vision, operate openly with trust and integrity, govern in a dignified and professional manner, treating everyone with civility and respect, govern with board-adopted policies and procedures, take collective responsibility for the board's performance, periodically evaluate its own effectiveness, and ensure opportunities for the diverse range of views in the community to inform board deliberations. And then the last set of characteristics that I wanted to highlight is what the job of the board. That would be to involve the community, parents, students, and staff in developing a common vision for the district focused on learning and achievement and responsive to the needs of all students. Adopt, evaluate, and update policies consistent with the law and the district's vision and goals, which I just want to pause and say that as difficult and rigorous, no doubt, as it has been, and again, knocking on wood for the second time tonight, I think we're kind of through that, but you know, you see our vision and our goals, and we invoked, I haven't invoked it lately because I really don't want to, but you know, the guiding principles throughout the pandemic and the wisdom that was expressed in doing that. So when I reread this, adopt, evaluate, and update policies consistent with the law and the district's vision and goals. Maintain accountability for student learning by adopting the district curriculum and monitoring student progress. Hire and support the superintendent so the vision, goals, and policies of the district can be implemented. Conduct regular and timely evaluations of the superintendent based on the vision, goals, and performance of the district, and ensure that the superintendent holds district personnel accountable. Adopt a fiscally responsible budget based on the district's visions and goals, our vision and goals, and regularly monitor the fiscal health of the district. Ensure that a safe and appropriate educational environment is provided to all students. Establish a framework for the district's collective bargaining process and adopt responsible agreements. And lastly, provide community leadership on educational issues and advocate on behalf of students in public education at the local, state, and federal levels. So I just want to, I know there have been a lot of nice comments that have been expressed by the board and thanks to staff, and I just wanted to take this opportunity as the superintendent of the district to commend the board for staying very well informed and for executing right in line with what these best practices are established at the state level and for all of the 1,000 school districts and their boards. And I just appreciate the tremendous commitment. And, you know, none of us are perfect, and I am the first in line to say that, you know, there's a lot of things that we learn as we go through the process, especially when we're really disrupted. But I just wanted to highlight, you know, the consistency of the board, the adherence to these principles, and the importance as we move forward to always keep those in focus. So at this time, I just want to mention that there is no financial implication. I'm not presenting this for action because it's already an adopted handbook, and that the revisions that are here and attached to the agenda are presented for informational purposes only, and no action is required.
Thank you, Dr. Ostash. Any comments on that from anyone on the board? Mr. Ferris?
I guess I just want to say thank you. It is, you know, whenever you're in a role or a job, it's important, I think, from time to time to stop and say, what is it again we're supposed to be doing, and are we doing it? And I appreciate the fact that that you were able to highlight those somewhat succinct but pretty comprehensive concepts and principles that keep us focused on exactly what our job is and what how we look if we're doing it correctly. So I think it's helpful for us, and I think it's a good setup for our meeting next week to do our self-evaluation. As you know, here's what we're supposed to be doing. Are we doing it? So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ferris. I concur. I think one of the things I noticed going through it is that towards the end, there's a lot of blank areas of coverage in the document, and you know, maybe we might want to talk about it during our evaluation, our self-evaluation. You know, if these things are of value to us in documenting and clarifying, maybe we should take some time to talk through those. And if not, maybe we should remove them from the document because it makes the document messy. I don't like messy. Any other questions or comments on the governance handbook from anyone on the board or the community? Great, thank you. No action is necessary. It's for information purposes only. That takes us to item 9.2, approval of amendment to the superintendent's contract. This third amendment to Dr. Ostash's contract revises his January 17th, 2019 employment contract, which was amended by the first amendment on June 18th, 2020, and the second amendment on June 17th, 2021. The third amendment increases Dr. Ostash's salary to $191,600 for the 2022-2023 school year. The third amendment extends the term of Dr. Ostash's employment contract through the end of the 2024-2025 school year, which is an additional year beyond the current amendment. The third amendment provides Dr. Ostash with a one-time 5% off-schedule bonus based on his 2021-22 salary of $175,000, valued at $8,750, subject to regular withholdings. The one-time off-schedule bonus shall be paid to Dr. Ostash no later than July 15th, 2022. With the exceptions of the revisions I mentioned, the third amendment leaves the other terms of Dr. Ostash's employment contract and the First Amendment unchanged through the 2024-25 school year. That may sound confusing because it refers to the First Amendment, even though there was a Second Amendment, but the Second Amendment terms have essentially passed and are not relevant to the Third Amendment, so that's why this references the First Amendment. Specifically, Dr. Ostash may continue to access the medical, dental, and vision benefits available to other certificated employees. He will also continue to receive reimbursement for ordinary and expenses and district-paid AXA dues. Dr. Ostash will also have continued access to a district cell phone and laptop or tablet. Dr. Ostash will also continue to receive 1 sick day per month, board-approved holidays, and personal necessity, bereavement, and other leaves provided to other district certificated management employees. Dr. Ostash may also access AXA's, wish we'd have used different words, that's hard. Dr. Ostash may also access AXA's Leading the Leaders program at the district's expense if the board approves his participation in that program. finally, Dr. Ostash may access CSBA's Tier 1 and Tier 2 programs if the board approves his participation in those programs. I think that, you know, what I'll go on to say is that we actually spent many hours doing Dr. Ostash's annual assessment. And it was a unique kind of experience because I think consistently across all aspects of the job that Dr. Ostash has been doing, we feel like he's done an extremely very solid job. In some aspects, we were challenged to think back to a time when a superintendent did a better job. I guess I'm hesitant to say this, but I will, because I think it speaks to the quality of individual we have in this job, and that's that this salary, that while it looks like it's a reasonably significant increase over what he made last year, is actually significantly lower than his peers. We were motivated based on the quality of job and the effort he's putting into it we would have gone higher. But because of Dr. Ostash's desire to keep equity within the district across the other staff employed here, as well as being conscious of you know, the financial needs of the district, he didn't want anything more. You know, what you see here is basically you know, the CEO of the company getting the same salary increase as all of the bargaining units. And Dr. Ostash is the one position where the board has the power to do something different than that, and he wouldn't let us. So I want to thank Dr. Ostash for the job he's doing. I couldn't be more thrilled, you know, being able to be the board president, you know, beside him. You know, I want to wholly support this amendment, and with great pride and great gratitude. So, having said that, the recommended action is to approve this third amendment to Dr. Ostash's contract. Got a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the board or community? Seeing none, we will have a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are unanimous. It takes us to item 9.3, authorization for board member travel to the California School Boards Association Annual Education Conference and Delegate Assembly Meeting. Dr. Ostash.
That's me. Thank you, Mr. Rockwell. At the regular meeting of the board on May 7, 2009, the board established protocol that requires the board to authorize all board member travel based upon the value of the travel and the status of the board's travel budget when evaluating each request. Information and dates for registration have been received for the 2022 California School Boards Association Annual Education Conference, Delegate Assembly Meeting, and Board of Directors meetings held just prior to the annual conference. The dates for the conference are December 1 through 3 this year. Mr. Johnson is a member of the CSBA Delegate Assembly, which is scheduled to meet on November 30, 2022, prior to the conference. Additionally, Mr. Ferris is a member of the CSBA Board of Directors, which holds meetings November 29 through 30 this year. As a member of the Board of Directors, Mr. Ferris will receive complimentary conference registration and 3 nights lodging during the conference. While conference specifics are not yet available, the conference traditionally covers a broad range of issues, including effective governance, community engagement, finance, facilities and revenue-generating strategies, partnerships and collaborations, and student learning and achievement. The estimated cost of travel per member attending the full conference is estimated as follows. For conference registration, it would be $695. Hotel of 3 nights is $1,365, $455 per night. Meals 4 days at $50 would be $200, and travel expense which would be shared rental and fuel approximately 100, which would be total of 2,360. The estimated cost of travel for Mr. Johnson to attend full conference and delegate assembly, all of the same line items, but the total is a little less because he gets some, I believe, some subsidy by CSBA, so it'd be 2,078. And then Mr. Ferris's is quite a bit less because of his role. His would be $1,040. So the total estimate for all board members to attend this annual conference for CSBA is $10,198. The financial implications: the board's annual budget is $22,000 for travel. To date, no board travel funds have been encumbered for the 22-23 school year. So obviously the travel is well within the budget that's been established. And in accordance with the board's adopted protocol, it's recommended that the board review the proposed travel as has been described for its members to attend the CSBA Annual Education Conference, for Mr. Johnson to attend the CSBA Delegate Assembly meeting, and for Mr. Ferris to attend the CSBA Board of Directors meeting, and determine to what extent it wishes to authorize these travel activities as described.
We got a motion and a second. I assume the motion means to fund all of the numbers that have been described here, right? Okay. Any comments, questions, comments from the board? Community? All right. This is the ongoing continuing education for board members that we do on an annual basis. And I think every year we come back with a lot more to contribute and a lot more knowledge, and you know, building great relationships with other board members and administrators across the state that we can lean on and can help. So it's a phenomenal opportunity. Seeing no more comments, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Takes us to construction administration. 10.1, approval of the payment of Division of State Architect fees for plan review for the HVAC replacement project. Mrs. Smith.
Good evening, President Rockwell, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Ostash, community and staff. On March 11, 2021, the board approved resolution number 25, 2021, making required findings and authorizing the implementation of the design-build project delivery method for the HVAC replacement at 4 schools and control system upgrades and air handler repairs at Burroughs High School Performing Arts Center, and issuance of a request for qualifications for vendors interested in bidding on the project. West Coast Air was selected as the most qualified bidder. On July 12, 2021, we issued a request for proposal for the HVAC upgrade project to West Coast Air. On November 18, 2021, we approved an agreement with West Coast Air for the design and pre-construction services for HVAC upgrades. In order to expedite review of the design by the Division of State Architect, West Coast Air paid the DSA fees associated with the plan review. The DSA fees are a district responsibility, and West Coast Air has invoiced the district for reimbursement of the fees. The financial implication: the total fees for the DSA design review is $25,532.02, and these will be funded by Fund 40 Capital Facilities Fund. It's recommended that the board approve the payment of the DSA fees for plan review for the HVAC replacement project as presented.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board? I guess the only question I'd ask is, if we don't approve this and they've already paid it, are we off the hook?
Well, we're still waiting for them to install all those HVAC systems.
They may not like that approach, huh? Okay. Any questions or comments from the community? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. We'll go to business administration. 11.1, approve an equity lease agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management for a Ford E350 cargo van.
So Enterprise Fleet Management, with their large vehicle network and purchasing power, offers a fleet management and cost reduction plan through Sourcewell, a competitively awarded contract. Contracting with Enterprise through this cooperative meets all requirements of procurement statutes as well as SSUSD board policies. By leasing the vehicles through Enterprise, we reduced the average age of the fleet to no more than 5 years, and at that time, vehicles are sold at auction and revenue is reinvested in the fleet. I will say, we have extended that 5-year cycle because of challenges in finding vehicles for the last 2 years. They have been unable to find the vehicles that we had originally planned on recycling, so it will probably be a 7-year cycle for the district. At this time, vehicles are sold at auction and revenue is reinvested in the fleet. In some instances, because of the fleet pricing used to purchase the vehicle, the amount of the vehicle can sell for almost covers the entire cost of the vehicle. Operating costs are reduced, maintenance costs is reduced, safety is increased, and significant outlays of capital are minimized when new vehicles are purchased. On December 12, 2019, the board approved resolution number 17/1920, authorizing the district to proceed with the analysis and initial proposal for enterprise fleet management for leasing the white fleet. On February 20th of 2020, the district approved an initial leasing agreement with EFM for 18 vehicles to start the leasing and resale cycle. The district then developed a list of older high-mileage vehicles for a second round of leasing. One of the vehicles that was identified at that time is a 2002 Ford E350 cargo van that's used by the warehouse for deliveries. Due to vehicle supply issues, EFM was not able to obtain many of the vehicles identified as requiring replacement during that 2021 analysis. One vehicle that they are now able to get is the E350 cargo van. The district wishes to lease this vehicle from EFM. The existing vehicle will be sold at auction or by the district at a future date, and that depends, of course, on the price they offer us for that vehicle at auction. We expect to auction them going forward, but for these older vehicles, it's sometimes more cost-effective for us to sell it ourselves. The financial implications, the delivery price of that vehicle is $51,101.66. The monthly cost to the district for leasing will be $1,025.44, and funding would come from Fund 01, General Fund Capital Outlay. It is the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve an equity lease agreement with Enterprise for the Ford E350 cargo van as presented.
We've got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board or community on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. So we will temporarily adjourn the meeting of the Sierra Sands School Board and open the Board of Directors meeting for the Inyo Kern Schools Financing Authority. We'll start with item 1, adoption of the agenda. Any changes? He said no changes. So, trust me, that's what he said. That'll take us to item 2, approval of minutes of the regular meeting of May 19th, 2022. Any concerns about those? Then those will stand. We will adjourn the Inyo Kern Schools Financing Board of Directors meeting and re-enter the Sierra Sands School Board regular meeting and move to section 13, consent calendar.
Move the entire.
Good luck with that, Diane. We've got a motion and a second on the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. That takes us to item 14, future agenda. Any future agenda items that we have not spoken of?
Just have a question, Mr. President.
Please.
Next week, we have our self-evaluation scheduled. In the last 2 or 3 years, we've used various instruments for that. Have we selected the specific instrument, and is it going to be distributed to us, or what is the plan?
Yeah, my intention was to use the CSBA document for that, and I have it. Would you like it too?
If you would share it with the rest of us, it might be a good idea.
I would be happy to distribute that tomorrow morning.
And that's fine
so you
too.
have plenty of time.
Between the two of us, one of us will get that to you post haste.
Would that be a hand delivery, sir?
Unlikely. Unlikely, unless you want to, if there's a pizza involved or something. No, I wouldn't take it. So we will get that to you so that you have a chance to review it, and we can all make good notes before we get there, and then we'll have a rousing conversation over how we're doing and how we could be better. So, you bet. Thanks for the reminder. Any other future agenda topics? That takes us to item 15, adjournment. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be July 21st, 2022. Thank you all for coming.